Hey, thanks for joining us here in the final episode of our three betting series. Alien Slayer and I are going to take you through some hands. So let's get to it. All right, this is the first hand we've got where we are presented with a decision of whether to squeeze or not. We're in the big blind. We have King, Queen, Jack 10 single suited. There's a limper in middle position. Button isolates to 4.5x. Small blind, half stacker calls. Um, Now, I think I included this hand because it's one of those spots where, a lot of players see King, Queen, Jack 10 single suited and get really excited and I think overvalue their hand a lot. And I think that Yurik and I both would agree that this is a spot that's actually better to not squeeze in. And let me explain why. So, what squeezing really accomplishes here is, well, for one thing, it pushes the fish out of the pot, which is very important. And always you want to keep track of or always keep the fish in the pot when you have a hand like this. One reason I think that is because it has good domination potential against the ranges of other opponents. You don't always have to squeeze with this type of hand to win a big pot. And although this hand does have very good post-flop potential, it's just unnecessary to squeeze. I think that at the time, though, when I was playing this hand, I thought that squeezing was better because the button was isolating wide. So I thought that my hand played very well against a button isolation range. But even if that's the case, I think that it's more, or I think there's more value in calling and keeping in the fish. Because when you squeeze here, you pretty much always push the fish out of the pot. What do you think about squeezing here? I mean, do you always call here, or would there ever be a situation where you would squeeze, or what's your thought process in these kind of situations?
Well, first of all, obviously we have a very nice hand, and squeezing can't be like terrible here, neither like a bad play. But considering our options and weighting the pros and cons, we see that there are way more pros for flat calling here. Because if we flat call, we're basically guaranteed that the limper will also flat call, and we have a four-way multi-way pot with pretty manageable SPR of around 5. So whenever we hit a strong, we will have no problem to get the money in by the river, and we play in a perfect scenario basically, since the limper and the small blind seem to be weaker players with wide ranges, and the button is a regular with also wide range for isolating. So we have basically the strongest hand here, and like you said, a lot of domination potential where the weaker players will stack off with non-nut straights while we make the nut straights, or with weaker trips than we will hit. So I think we have definitely a lot of implieds. By contrast, if we decide to squeeze here, the most likely outcome is that the limper is going to fold, the isolator probably calls, maybe not, and the small blind as well. And we are having heads up or three-way pot with a very low SPR. We can't really take advantage of the playability of our hand.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we will still get stacks in, dominating our opponent's hands, since they will more likely read us on aces. But I think that doesn't really outweigh the fact that the great playability this hand has multi-way.
Okay. All of that was very good. Now, I want to ask you a couple more questions. First being, let's say that there wasn't the limper. Let's say it was just like a button open and a small blind call. Would you squeeze in that spot?
Yeah, then it becomes much more valid because now we have pre-flop fold equity, and we have a more in, like, we don't have a reason to not squeeze to invite another weaker player in, so we can play our hand more for its value, and comparing it to our opponent's range that will be probably pretty wide from the button.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, that's basically.
Cool. Second question. If we call here and we flop strong, you're mostly looking to lead, right? Or like, kind of, what's your approach in these like four-way pots? Do you sort of, when you flop strong, do you take control of the hand by building it, or are you looking for a check raise?
And basically, always whenever I flop strong, I'm thinking about the likelihood that the original raiser is going to c-bet.
Hmm.
And I think that whenever we hit, for example, a nut straight, it's very unlikely that the preflop raiser is going to c-bet with air into three other guys, and he may even pot control a lot of medium strong hands like non-nut straights or sets. So I would definitely always opt to lead whenever I flop the nuts on a dynamic board,
Okay.
like a straight board. This way we also ensure the weaker players to call and not give them basically free ride. The only times I would not necessarily lead when I flop strong is when the board is really static, saying we flop the top full house, or another really like a bear like trips on a very static board. Then I think the likelihood of the c-better of the preflop raiser going to c-bet is much higher, so I would going for a check there in this case.
Okay. Cool. I think that all sounds pretty good. I like it. As played, we actually do squeeze. Button and small blind both call. And I'm showing you the post flop because I actually think that my line here is pretty good. I just gave up, and I think that's a pretty good option. I just think that like a c bet is not going to work here very often, even if we did bet like 100 or 40 or something like that. Nobody's going to fold a pair, and I think that we like get check raised on here enough to where like I just don't see like how a c bet would really be profitable without a pair or any other kind of draw. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean now we see our problem. Because that what we didn't talk about in the first place, neither that there will be a lot of flops that we don't hit,
Mm-hmm.
like this one, all the dry ace high boards, all the low card boards, all the low paired boards, and since we bloated up the pot so much that the SPR is under 1.5, the SPR, so we really have no playability post flop left to not even be able to c-bet bluff. Actually, on even the board is pretty dry overall. We just can't. There's no valid option. Basically, nobody. If one of them, it's very likely that at least one of them has an ace or a pair with a gut shot. And I think, like you said, our folding equity is basically non-existent, and we are best off to check give up here.
Okay, cool. And like I said, that's what we do. Checks through. Short stack leads for pot. We fold. And the other player folds. Yep, interesting hand. If you don't have anything else to add, I think that we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, let's check out the next one.
Okay.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Casino Crime here. Now, if you like this video and you want more, then go ahead and click the subscribe button below right now. And if you want to join me for more of my 6 max success secrets and free video tutorials, just click the link to the right. See you inside the trainings. Good luck.